Welcome to Gateway of Atonement. It's wonderful to have you here. Today we are going to learn how to find joy in misfortune. How to find joy in misfortune. Oh, I see some scowls and some frowns. Hopefully you're frowning out there too at the idea. But Jews have been geniuses at being happy through any circumstances. And we have in our class today really one of the key techniques of how Eastern European Jews did that. And we can benefit, I can benefit, and you can benefit from learning how, no matter what's happening around me, no matter what crazy or seemingly negative events are occurring, I can still be joyful. So please stay with us and you will learn that technique as well. I'm going to catch us up to where we are because we're in the middle of chapter 11 of this section of the Tanya called Igeres HaTshuva. It is page 286 in volume 3 of this edition of Lessons in Tanya. We started the chapter by talking about how the Zohar says you can have weeping on one side of your heart and laughing and joy on the other side of your heart. Weeping on one side and joy on the other side. And that corresponds to the two levels of atonement that we've been learning about. Lower level atonement. There.
Can I interrupt you 1 second?
Yeah.
We had a question, Dan and I, last minion about...
And just, if you can't speak up, I know we're further from the mic.
We had a question last minion about covering your eyes in the Shema. And you're supposed to use your right hand. And I asked the question, why? Why right hand as opposed to left hand? Does that have to do with the right hand, left heart, right heart?
I'm sure it always does, because the right hand is always chesed, is always joy. So I could find a nice poetic reason. I haven't read sources of why that is, but 100%, if you're using your right hand versus your left hand, that means it connects to chesed versus gevura. I can look up and see what,
No.
Yeah.
Okay. That's fine.
Yeah.
You didn't like my excellence.
You have an explanation?
Yeah, the right hand is supposed to be the most prestigious hand.
Mm.
And there's a couple of citations in the Torah and then Mishnah about one was he touched the thumb to the finger of the thumb of the right hand and then the toe
The concha.
of the right toe.
Yeah.
And therefore the right, for some reason, is most prestigious. You use the right to hold your Kiddush cup, you hold the right.
Putting your shoes out right.
You wash
Yeah.
You start with your right hand when you wash.
Good. So it's a moment. It's a beautiful moment of connecting to God. So your right hand should be involved. It's the most honorable side.
Yes.
Good. I like
in a
that.
nutshell.
And of course, it's Judaism. So we could also find 10 other beautiful explanations that all have merit, and you can use them as you're meditating and doing the Shema, whatever is most meaningful for you. So we're very multifaceted that way. So we started by talking about lower and higher level tshuva. Lower level tshuva, as we've taught, is what we understand typically as tshuva. I'm sorry I did this to anyone in my life. I tell them, they give me forgiveness. I approach God. God, I'm sorry I did this. God forgives me, and now it's gone, it's wiped clean, and I'm done. But that also has to be accompanied by soul searching and breaking of the heart, right? And to the extent that I've really been contrite and there's sadness involved and seriousness involved, now that lower level tshuva is complete. And as we said, we attach the latter hey of the 4-letter name of God back to God's name because we may have disrupted it with our actions. So lower level tshuva, that's the sadness. But now we're learning about tshuva ila'ah, higher level tshuva. And this is, the repair's been done. I'm back connected to God. Now, through, as we said, learning Torah with love and awe and the other aspects we discussed, now I'm reuniting with God as if I am God's breath within God's chest before God breathes my soul out. So what's to be sad about if I'm so united with God, if I'm experiencing this incredible lofty union with God that goes beyond the levels that exist in the universe? I'm one with God. I'm thrilled, I'm happy, I'm excited, I'm celebrating, and that's the joy. So higher level tshuva is connected to joy, lower level to sadness and seriousness. And the Alter Rebbe said at the beginning of this chapter, those can exist at the same time because they come from different sources, one from the right, one from the left. So I can genuinely, if I'm an evolved intellect, I can genuinely be both joyful and serious and sad at the same time. And then we went through a long section reassuring us from many angles that definitely 100% God has forgiven us. Partly because there may be doubts in my mind, because for humans it's difficult to forgive. The third time is more difficult than the first, and the 10th more than the third. For God, the 1,000th time is exactly identical to the first time. And B, because humans may withhold forgiveness, whereas with God we know it's automatic. And you can watch, we saw many sources saying, we couldn't even say the blessing in the Amida, blessing God for forgiving us, unless we know for sure God had forgiven us. And so from many angles, we know that as soon as we have actually apologized genuinely, then God for sure has forgiven us. We can rejoice in that. Before we start the section we're at, which is one of my favorite sections, Finding Joy in Misfortune, I love it. We are in Elul, the month of Elul, so we are going to blow the shofar today for anyone that hasn't heard. This is a minhag to blow the shofar every day of Elul, really to get yourself ready for the process of tshuva. So we can stand in class, and I hope you'll find somewhere where you can hear it in person, but if not, this will do. I'll do 3 groups with tekiah on each side and then the special one in the middle. Nice.
Very nice.
Cantor, is it supposed to be 100 times?
On Rosh Hashanah, how many times do you hear it? Is that the number 100?
I don't know.
That'd be for the whole day. I mean, the one shofar service is less than 100 times, but there's during Musaf and at the end, you confuse Satan at the end of the whole holiday. So
Cantor's noticed that you blew the shofar on the right side.
that's my left side.
Oh.
Yeah.
Supposed to do it on the right side.
I think people do wherever they're comfortable. A lot of people do it on
Wherever
the
you
side.
can get it out.
Brass players do it right in the middle for sure because they're professionals, but I got comfortable here. It works best. But this really speaks to one part of tshuva, that is, we can understand it, but in the end, you almost have to embody it. This gets down into your what's called your procedural memory, right? We have our rational memory, like how you would describe something in language. You have your representational memory, how you picture things. You have a level of procedural memory that you can only get to by doing the thing over and over again. That's why Jews just do things. So there's a part of tshuva that's like you want to feel in your body, and the shofar is the most primal way of getting at it. So we're going to start. I'm going to skip a little section here where the Alter Rebbe did describe what came up. What happens if I say, well, I've learned all about tshuva, so why don't I go and I'll have some nice non-kosher food, and I'll do some horrible things, and I'll lie to some people, and then I'll do tshuva, and it'll all be gone. So why not enjoy doing the sins, and then I'll do tshuva. I can get the best of both worlds. Let me go ahead and have fun, right? In that case, if the ability to do tshuva was what caused you to sin, so it wasn't that you couldn't hold yourself back and you were overcome by whatever feeling, but you literally said, you know what, since there's tshuva, let me just go and sin. Great, what a great deal. Now tradition says that God won't allow you to do tshuva, right? That's actually a loophole that God doesn't allow. But the Alter Rebbe finishes the conversation by saying, all that means is that God won't provide us the opportunity or the inclination to do tshuva, so that person won't have a still small voice that maybe a couple of times a day goes, Smolash, maybe you should shape up, maybe you could be better, right? You know that voice. So that's God giving me the opportunity to do tshuva. But if I've done tshuva stam, like just because if I've sinned because tshuva is available, now that voice won't speak. God's like, okay, you're on your own. And also, there won't be opportunities around me that will make me feel like doing tshuva. Like I won't see, if you have a bad relationship with your child, you won't see a child and their parent hugging, and that'll make you think, oh, I should make up with my child because God's reminding me, right? So God will hold that stuff back and won't provide the opportunities for tshuva. But for sure, the final word is, as the Alter Rebbe says, if you push yourself and you decide you're going to do tshuva no matter what, nothing stands in the way of tshuva, even if you sinned because tshuva was available, as described here. But that's not key to our class. I'm going to skip to the first of Av, bottom of 287.
But didn't you also say that God, words were received infinite forgiveness?
Say it again, Rick.
Yeah, once you apologize.
Infinite forgiveness was last week's.
Once you apologize, God's forgiveness is immediate, infinite, and not limited like ours is. But I'm talking here about a person who sinned, hasn't done tshuva, and specifically sinned because they knew that tshuva was available. You'd think that they would just go ahead and do tshuva. You're right. So there's a little wiggle there. But that person has to really do sincere tshuva on their own. That's the point. You feel like if God has infinite forgiveness, God should always provide the opportunity. God should even...
No matter what you do.
It's fair. I mean, it's a moral question. I don't know. Tradition is pretty clear on that one, that the person that does a sin because tshuva is available, that the idea is that a lawyer can't be both the accusing lawyer and the defending lawyer, right? That's a rule in Jewish law. And so if the tshuva is what caused a person to sin, because tshuva is there, yay, I'll sin. That's now the cause. So that's now the accusing lawyer. It can't also be the defending lawyer and say, you should forgive this person, do tshuva. But take home is, if we do tshuva, nothing stands in the way. It's up to us. So bottom of 287. 287. Uma shekatuv v'chatati negdi tamid. Go ahead, let's start with Noreen. As to
the verse that says, my sin is always before me.
My sin is always before me. So this is from David Melech, who wrote Psalms, wrote, my sin is always before me. And this presents a problem with what we just learned, right? If I should always be joyful, why? Because God has forgiven my sins, and God has infinite forgiveness, so I know they're forgiven, and now I'm joyful because I'm back with God. What's with my sins always being before me? Always before me? Like there's no point where I can let go and say, okay, fresh start. I don't have to hold that over my head. I shouldn't feel bad and guilty. And if I'm always looking at my sins, and my sins are always before me, how can I be joyful? Right? I'm still now saying, look how I failed. Look how I messed up. Look at the damage I've done. Make sense? So like the Alter Rebbe often does, he now brings up a counterpoint to explore something deeper. And of course, this is from when Nathan criticized David around Bathsheba and that whole incident, which I'm sure many of us are aware of. En ha-mechuvan liot tamid atzev v'nivzeh chas v'shalom.
This does not imply that one ought to be constantly melancholy and humiliated, God forbid.
Right, so if my sins are always before me, right? I'm never going to be happy. I'll walk around, broken and contrite. And the Alter Rebbe says, no, that's not what it meant. The fact that they're always before you should not get in the way of your joy. And he'll solve it for us. And he actually provides proof that your sins being before you is not going to get in the way of joyfulness, of joy is the word, because in the same verse, David says, Daha ktiv batre tashmi'eni sason v'simcha v'gomer.
For later verses declare, let me hear gladness and joy.
Right, so if he's saying first, my sins are always before me, and then he says, in the same chapter, not the same verse, let me hear gladness and joy. So David clearly found a way in his teaching us that he always had his sins in front of him, and yet he heard gladness and joy. He was in a state of jubilation, and that was the best way to actually function as Oh, what is it?
It just makes me angry. His sins before him, he was always sinning more. He sinned till with his last breath. So his sins are always before him, and it didn't bother him.
I know
So
you and I differ on King David.
Yeah, I know.
But and I see your strong feelings and I honor them. For this class, let's pretend we're talking about somebody
trying.
that tradition calls
I'm
him.
trying
yeah.
to forgive the man.
Tradition. Well, it's not. I mean, that's it. It's not up to me to forgive anyone else, right? It's to God. David didn't do anything to me.
Right.
And
Never.
let's learn this class from the perspective of tradition, which says that
I know.
David was the consummate Baal Tshuva,
I know.
and ultimately a tzaddik. So that's how tradition looks. And I know we have to do all kinds of just contortions to say why this really wasn't a sin. It was just sort of a improper behavior, and really so and so wasn't already, and blah blah blah. But that's how tradition sees it. So let's not get cut up. But I appreciate your point. So and veruach nediva tismecheni v'gomer.
And uphold me with a spirit of magnanimity.
And so more good things, more joy. Moreover, umishum shetzarich liot kol yamav b'tshuva ilaa shehi b'simcha rabba kanizkar le'el.
Moreover, throughout one's day, one should experience teshuvah, ilah, a manner of repentance that is marked by great joy, as noted above.
This is from the Talmud, that we are commanded not just to be happy, but to experience that higher level of tshuva that is characterized by joy. So that should be our reality. If we're Jews, we're Yehudim, we're ones that acknowledge God, then we should be walking around full of joy all the time, right? And yet, there's something about our sins being before me that is involved here, so let's figure this out. Rather, Ela negdi daika.
Rather, the term used for before me is specifically negdi, which implies being opposite, but at a certain distance.
Right, so it could have said lifanai tamid, lifanai, right in front of my face, but it says negdi, and negdi actually is used in two senses in the Torah. One is in front of me, and one is at a distance.
Against.
At a distance. Also against. Yeah. But in this case, he's bringing out Kmo ve'ata ti tiatzev mineged saviv la'ohel moed yachanu.
As in the verse that says, you shall stand at a distance, meneged, or at a distance, meneged, around the tent of assembly shall they camp.
This is a soldier saying to Yoav that if he kills Avshalom, and then David comes and says David wanted to save Avshalom, Yoav wanted to kill Avshalom, and the soldier said, if I kill Avshalom to Yoav, when David comes in his anger, I killed his son, you're going to be mineged, which he meant far away. You're not going to like swoop in and defend me. You're going to stand at a distance. And also in terms of being around the camp, that was at a distance. So this word is used not just for in front of me, but also for at a distance. And that is actually the technique we're going to use our past counterproductive actions in order to be happy and to navigate life in the best way. Also, Rashi, Uferish, Rashi, Merachok. So go ahead, Noreen again.
Rashi defines the above term opposite as at a distance.
So also Rashi. So here we're saying, when I have my sins in front of me, they shouldn't be big in my vision. They shouldn't be affecting me deeply. They shouldn't be, high definition visualizations. It should be far off. It should be at a distance. Like, oh yeah, way over there. I remember, this is always there, but it's not like really impacting me emotionally and making me unhappy, but I also haven't wiped it away and forgotten it. It's at a distance in my mind and constant. So that's the model that the Alter Rebbe is teaching us. Does it make sense? Hence, v'ha mechuvan rak levilti rum levavo.
Hence, the intention of our verse is merely that one's heart should not grow haughty.
Right. So, if if I have reached a level of tshuva ila'ah, right? So I've done lower level tshuva, God's forgiven me, now I've learned Torah with love and awe, and I've experienced this intense joy of returning to God. That's a pretty cool thing, isn't it? And maybe people come to me and they say, oh, I noticed you're so happy in your Judaism. How do you do it? And you're sharing with them, and maybe students are coming or whatever, and you feel pretty good about yourself. And, one of the teachers that I learned from online says, the more nullified, the more surrendered someone gets to God, often they get less surrendered to the people around them, right? So I might be very, very, have a lot of bittul for Hashem, for God, but suddenly I'm not so sensitive to the people around me and I can get haughty. So that is the exact opposite of the process we want. So this, will allow us to remain appropriately humble, because who am I, right? I've done all kinds of negative things. And as the Alter Rebbe said, how do I know that someone else isn't passing a much more difficult test than I failed when I did them, right? Because I have no idea what their inclinations are, what their character is, right? So if I failed, who am I to feel better than anyone else? So I'll make sure that I stay humble and not grow haughty.
And that he be humble of spirit before all men.
And here he used the word ha'adam. And as we know, the Alter Rebbe is very particular about words. So there's actually two versions of this paraphrase from Pirkei Avot. Sometimes we say Adam and sometimes we say ha'adam. Adam refers generally to Jewish people, and ha'adam refers to humanity, all people. So if you're sensitive to that, you recognize that the Alter Rebbe is saying not just in front of your community, but in front of any person you ever meet, you need to be humble. And how do you do that? By always having your sins before you.
Because there will be a remembrance between his eyes that he has sinned before God.
Right. So reason one why we want to have our sins before us is humility. And that's important. That's really important, because if I become full of myself and think I'm better than people, now I'm actually sliding backwards, so to speak, rather than forwards. No matter what spiritual level I think I've gotten, it starts with recognizing that I'm in the same boat as everybody, and I may as well consider myself way behind them. It's funny, I thought of a visualization for this, right? Because, it's easy to think like, oh, now that I'm learning and I'm doing, aren't I ahead of people? I thought, these YouTubers that are online, that they create these, like Mr. Beast creates these crazy contests and things. They're fascinating. And what if Mr. Beast invited 10 contestants, and they each had to give $1,000 in, and then they had a race for 10 miles, but they didn't see each other. They only had a reader on their arm, and they could see where everyone was. So this person was ahead 5 miles, 2 miles, 4 miles. But you won his prize of, say, $10 million if you got the most points. And he'd give every contestant a weight, but each one might have a different weight. So for every mile I ran, I get 1 extra point for every pound I'm carrying, right? And say it was more complicated. He said that for every year over 50, you get another point for every mile you walk or run. Right? So it's a 10-mile race for everybody. I don't know where they are, but I get extra points for more weight and extra points if I'm older. And now I'm running the race, and I see I'm ahead of the whole pack. Like I've run 7 miles, and I'm way ahead of everybody. What should I assume?
That you're going to win.
You think I should assume that I'm going to win? So fine, I'm ahead of everybody. Just keep it up, normal pace.
That they're carrying more weight.
What if they're carrying more weight? Right? What if I've got a 30-pound weight, but the guy right behind me has an 80-pound weight and is 10 years older than me? Am I really winning? Right? So the readout that I have in that race, it might look like I'm ahead because I'm on mile 7, but what I can't see is that some other people have much more barriers and are racking up points faster. So in fact, if I want the best results for myself, I should assume that I'm always behind. I should assume everybody else is carrying more weight, everybody else is older, and then I'm going to go as fast as I can. I have the best chance of winning that $10 million. That imaginary race, that's what this life is like. Right? We're all looking at a readout. We're all seeing, you're over there, I'm over here, my eyes, my ears are telling me there's 2 of us, all that stuff. Also, I'm saying, oh, look, I blew the shofar for people. I'm learning some Tanya. Look how ahead I am. I'm on mile 5 now. I'm going well. But I have no idea what's going inside other people and what their barriers, what their challenges are. It may be that somebody that on the surface looks like they're only accomplishing a tiny bit, that tiny bit, they had to work so hard to achieve it that they're way ahead of me. And that should really be my stance. Everybody that I meet, I should assume that you're all way ahead of me, and I have no reason, I should only be humble. That's the only logical conclusion. And it's the best way to get myself to work harder, right? So that really is a key, right? And having my sins before me is a great tool. And no matter how much progress I feel I'm making, let's not get ahead of myself and think I'm better than anybody, God forbid, right? Any questions on that? I see nods, so we all agree. So reason 1 is humility, but now there's a second reason that has to do with joy, and this is really a great secret in my mind of Judaism. If you think back, Eastern European Jews, for centuries, lived in the most intolerable poverty, insecurity, violence, deprivation. That was just life, right? If you read stories from there, they say that, this person, this beggar, hadn't eaten in a week. Literally, this is what they went through. It was just living on scraps, and at any time, Cossacks could sweep in and your whole village was gone, and if you had hope for your children, they couldn't go and be part of society and become a professional. It was just poverty, right? Even like the wealthy person in town was, living in a state that we could hardly tolerate here in North America. And yet, through those centuries, they found ways of living life with total joy. Total joy. The idea of a Hasidic master dancing and always being joyful no matter what, that came out of all places, Eastern Europe, right? Not out of Spain and the golden age of Judaism, not out of North America with all our privileges. We should be the happiest Jews in the world. And, half of us are neurotic and depressed. Look at us, right? And yet the Jews of Eastern Europe that were living with nothing, from there we get this cliche almost of a person that's just always joyful, always serving God with joy. How did they do it? The secret, one of them is right here. V'adarabba le'inyan hasimcha, yo'il zicharon hachet b'yeter se'et. Sure, Eleanor, why don't you get us started? In fact,
as far as joy is concerned, the remembrance of one's past sins will be especially effective.
Oh, especially effective, right? So now that I have my sins at a distance in front of me, so they're not in my face, making me go, I sinned, right? They're at a distance, and we'll do a meditation if we have time, showing you how to do that. It's easy. Like we do it in NLP all the time. You're allowed to change your screens, and we'll show you how. Neuro-linguistic programming, NLP. But having those in front of me is especially effective at being constantly joyful. Why would that be? בכדי לקבל בשמחה כל המאורעות המתרגשות ובאות.
In encouraging happiness in the face of whatever misfortunes threaten to overtake him.
Right, so no matter what's happening around me, by using this technique, I can always remain in joy despite what seems like situations that call for the opposite. Bein min hashamayim, bein al yedei habriot.
Whether from heaven or through the agency of man.
And this is important to remember because sometimes we think, okay, I'm good at dealing with misfortune. You know what? I'm going to use the technique. If somebody does something that seems negative to me, thank God, I'm going to reframe it, and now I'm going to be joyful. But if something comes from heaven, and if God is judging me, or clearly God is sending now I'm going to answer God back and say, how can you do that to me? I should use this as well with God. That if anything happens, whether from the world or seemingly from heaven, that I can still be in a total state of joy no matter what. And either b'dibur or b'maseh.
Whether in speech or in deed.
Right, so it's whether someone says something to me or does something to me, it makes no difference. And to get into this, I want to talk about the two aspects of tshuva that we learned way back at the beginning of this whole section. And that is mechila and kapara. Mechila and kapara. Mechila is when someone comes to me and they stole my favorite microphone and they took it on the road and they dropped it in a beer cup and it was destroyed. That's my favorite microphone. I'm brokenhearted. And they say, "I'm so sorry. I meant to just." I mean, how would you feel? How would you feel?
I'd be destroyed.
Destroyed, exactly. Yeah, my favorite microphone that I record all my stuff with. Right? They come back. "I'm so sorry I did this. Please forgive me." Okay, you're forgiven. Fine. Thanks for apologizing. Now get out of my face. Like you're making me angry, right? I've forgiven them formally. It's done. Now it's off their plate. Now they can go to God and ask for forgiveness, right? So there's no punishment. But are we friends? Do I still have the warm feelings that I had before? Or is it repaired? Or was it just the right thing to do? I did it with as much emotion as I could, but give me a break, right? This isn't, we're not back to where we were before. I don't feel like I can trust them. Whereas, if now they work to show how bad they feel and how changed they are, and they, go and buy me an even better mic and give it as a present, and then they, get involved in a project, and I know I can trust them, and yada yada. And now 6 months later, I've forgotten about it, and we're colleagues and friends. Now that is kapara. Because what's happened? There was still some schmutz in the relationship, right? We know what that's like. When a relationship is off. Kapara is taking a steel wool. Do you still say that, steel wool? That's how we call it the
Yes.
what do you call it? Steel wool. The steel bunchy thing. And you're scrubbing the relationship, and you're getting all the schmutz off, right? Now, someone looking from the outside might think that's a corrosive, almost violent process, right? Scrubbing off, you're scraping, and there's sounds, and it feels like you're almost damaging, but in fact, you're cleaning it. You're getting the schmutz off. It's that scouring that we are now doing in life after we've apologized to God. And so the reframe is, whenever anything happens to me that's negative, I could think, "Oh, I don't deserve this. Why is this happening to me? Poor me. I got to get out of this," and be upset. Or I could think, "Oh, wait, I did some sins. And that stuff is still on me. That stuff is still sticking to me. It's weighing me down, and I'm going to have my soul cleansed of that stuff at some point. God's doing it for me. God's giving me a little bump or a little negative thing, or some person saying something I don't like. And what's it doing? It's scrubbing my soul clean, right? A young child hates going to the dentist because they don't understand. Me, I love going to the dentist because my teeth are so clean after and healthy. I don't get toothaches. I love it, right? Or look at a surgery, right? Someone has important surgery they need to have to save their life, God forbid, right? And it should be successful if you have it, God forbid. A child looking at a surgery would say, "Why are the doctors hurting this person? They're cutting them, they're bleeding, they're taking things out, putting things in. It's torture. What a negative thing." A child would see that and say, "This is terrible," and they'd be upset. But of course, the patient who knows that their life is in danger is so grateful to the doctor, so grateful. And they look at that scar and they think, "That saved my life," right? And so they're joyful that the surgery is successful. And to them, the pain, yes, it's pain, but there's a joy that's in it. They're able to reframe it. So whichever idea works best for you, this is the reframe we're using when we say, "My sins are always in front of me." My sins are always in front of me. Because I know now whatever happens in life, it's actually, I should be happy because this is to my benefit. And we'll get much more in chapter 12 into the details of how that works and doing it in this physical world versus doing it in the spiritual world after you're done your 120 years. But just that idea should be enough. And it's very powerful. There's a doctor, Henry Beecher, I think is his name. And he talked about when he was in World War II in, where was it, Italy? And he was charged of giving morphine to injured soldiers. And if you heard the story, he ran out of morphine. And so at a certain point, he was giving less and less. And then finally, he had none. And soldiers he knew at the point where the morphine was wearing off. It lasts a certain number of hours, and then you're on your own. You're experiencing pain. So he'd go around and he'd say, "I don't have much left. Do you need more morphine?" And these soldiers that had terrible injuries said, no, I don't feel any pain. It's still working. And he's looking at them knowing that it's not the morphine that's blocking the pain, right? And if you think, And put yourself in the mind of a soldier on the beach in the middle of World War II, and they're going into Europe, and they're, you know, fighting for who knows how many years, and they could lose their lives and never see their loved ones. And I get, you know, a bullet in the shoulder or whatever, and now I'm lying on the beach. What's going through my mind? Am I thinking, oh, poor me, I got shot in the shoulder? Or what are they thinking? What's their future now?
I'm still alive.
Still alive, thank God. Now I'm alive. I was injured, but I'm alive. And what else? Are they now marching into Europe?
No, they get to go home.
They get to go home. Oh wait, I'm going home. I'm going to see some nurses. I'm going to see my family's going to visit. I'm going to recuperate in a hospital. Maybe the war will be over by the, like, this could have saved my life. And I mean, they're lying there in pain, but also in great relief and great joy because they've been spared from, I mean, their friends are marching forward. Who knows how many of them will die. That reframe, according to the story, could actually block the pain of a massive injury. And this doctor said he went out to work in a hospital in the city. He'd never seen anyone deal with pain like this in the city, because in the city I get shot in the shoulder, and what am I thinking?
Why me?
Why me? Poor me. Can't go to work, in my way, will be in the hospital, the money I'm going to spend, expenses, it's all negative. So let me just wrap this, right? So it's very powerful, this reframe of saying, rather than why me, of saying, oh great. God's actually working on my soul. God cares about me. God's scouring this off, and God's taking care of this for me, of anything that may be left from those sins that I did. And so this is actually beautiful. This is helping me. And now I can be joyful. I know there'll be discussion, so bring it on.
No.
Are these two, Nechila and Kapara,
Yeah.
are those processes that I do or think or go through, or something that I think God is doing?
It's something you ask for and something God grants. But it's also the case in relationships. And Mechila and Kapara, that's, you know, we all know you can forgive somebody, but you haven't really healed.
Forget.
You haven't healed, right? The difference is here. The Alter Rebbe is saying, no, you never forget.
Right.
It's always before you, but it's at a distance. It's healed. It's not affecting
So
you.
we're
It's not
just
in the way.
describing what's going on.
Hmm?
We're describing how I feel about it.
What we're describing is a posture that I want to take
Okay.
that's going to allow me to be in a state of higher tshuva and joy and humility all at the same time.
Okay.
Yeah. So this, and by the way, some caveats. I should have given before, and I apologize I didn't. All these techniques, when we talk about something negative that I should be joyful for, this only applies in a very limited bandwidth, in a very limited situation. I only apply this to myself,
That's better.
right?
Yeah.
So I'm sorry I didn't start with
I was
it.
thinking
And
that.
I've said this before, but any of these techniques, this is only for me to myself, and if you want, for you to yourself, but it's not my place to say anyone else should be happy in their misfortune. God forbid, right? So this is a technique only each of us use internally with ourselves, end of story. B, it's something we only use with things that have happened in the past, right? Something happened yesterday or last month, and now my mind's spinning, poor me, oh, I lost money, or what this person said, and I'm running it in my mind. I want to take this, I want to say, no, my sins are before me, this is helping with that, it's positive, I'm going to be happy it happened, end of story, move on, right? But it does not apply to things happening in this moment, right? So we're not turning the other cheek. If somebody's actually chasing me, you know, wanting to smack me in the face, I run away, I call the police, I defend myself. As Jews, we are partners in what's happening. So we don't say, oh, it's all for the good, go ahead, smack my face. You defend yourself and you do what you can in the moment to avoid misfortune, right? So we're not chasing misfortune, we're not complacent in the face of misfortune. We are part of divine providence. God put us here to protect ourselves, protect people with us, protect anyone in our environment that we can. So you don't do this with things that are happening right now that you could help avoid. But if it's something that's between me and myself, and it's something that happened in the past, now, this is a technique that I put in full force in order to maintain my own joy, right? But God forbid I should ever say, oh, that person's getting misfortune because of a sin of theirs, and it's really helping them, so I shouldn't worry about it, right? I see somebody else's misfortune, them, I say, oh, I'm so sorry this happened, this is horrible, how can I help? Poor you. Clear? So it's a very limited bandwidth, but it's as limited as it is super effective at creating joy with all these stories we have about poor me, what happened in the past. There's some silence here. You feel good about this? Where am I? On the page?
וזו עצה.
וזו, כן. וזו עצה טובה להינצל מכעס וכל מיני כפרה וכו'.
This humility on account of one's imperfect record is good counsel that enables man to be immune to becoming angry or taking offense at any way.
And so not only will I be happy and more effective in everything I'm doing and more inspiring, right? If my children see me joyfully keeping Shabbat and loving, doing the grace after meals and really just treasuring the time together in the candles, maybe it'll influence them. If they see me coming home going, oh, I had to put my phone away and I can't drive, I have to walk, it's so difficult to keep Shabbat. Are they going to grow up and think that's a good thing to do? Right. So if I'm joyful, I'm going to be a better influence, I'm going to be more effective, but also it'll make me immune to being angry, which is one of the biggest sins. For us in Judaism, anger is the same as idol worship. And the punishments for anger and the fast for anger we describe are extreme. So anger is one of those things that even Maimonides says you got to run from it to the furthest extreme. You don't want a balanced relationship with it. Right? We're never allowed to become angry under any circumstances, even if it seems warranted. I know. When I say that, people get angry, right? But this is how you get immune to being angry, is I say, okay, this is happening to me. I've done sins, so I'm going to blame this person. And B, in fact, this is good for me. They're helping me. So what's to be angry? Thank you. You just scoured my soul. And let me say, even if it feels like, okay, how do I prove that's true? Maybe it's nonsensical. Maybe it's upside down. If in the end, it allows me to be joyful no matter what's happening. And I'm not running to misfortune. I'm still protecting myself. But if something has happened and now I can either be depressed and upset or I can be joyful, and I can't prove one or the other, why not take the approach that makes me joyful? What's the harm? There's only benefit. And that's how the Jews of Europe created this pathway to actually living whole lives in these terrible conditions. We know what it was like, and yet great joy. Great joy. They love their lives. They love their families, their relationships with God. Nothing would get in the way. Right? So now that's here for us to model on.
As our sages declare, those who are humiliated yet do not humiliate in turn.
Right, so now we're going to have 3 levels of this practice for us to model. Right? One is, someone says something in front of the whole room about me that's embarrassing, and you know how that feels. And so what's my first snap? We all saw, we're used to these political debates. Somebody says something about you, you got to go right back, or you're going to look bad, right? God forbid I look bad in front of other people. I gotta have a zinger to throw back, and that proves that I'm a great person, right? Level 1 is, someone says something about me in public that seems humiliating. Do not throw a zinger back. Right? That's level 1, right? Because you know what? My sins are in front of me. They did this. It's good for me. I'm gonna ignore it. I'm gonna move on. Okay? This is good. Level 2, shomin cherpatam ve'ein meshivin.
Who hear their insult and do not retort.
Hey, this is 2. So I'm not gonna throw a zinger back, but I should explain and defend myself, right? Someone says something embarrassing and untrue and humiliating about me. Say, well, hold on, let me explain the situation, da-da-da-da-da. So, I should defend my honor and clear the record. That makes sense, right? Level 2 is, you know what? That doesn't matter. This is just for the good. My sins are in front of me. You know what? They said something that was false, but I did do things that I'm embarrassed of to some extent. They're right there. So what's the difference? In fact, this humiliation is good for me, and it's cleansing my soul, so I'm not even going to say anything. I'm just going to move on, right? That's level 2. Do you know anyone like that? Because I'm not sure I do. That's a high level. But there's a level higher than that, Sorry, was that sarcastic? I mean, be honest, right? Osim me'ahava usmechim b'isurim v'chulu. What's this third level?
Who perform out of love and are happy in affliction. Concerning them does Scripture say, those who love him shall be like the sun rising in all its might.
Right, so here, we're actually happy in affliction. You're actually visibly joyful. You really feel joy because you've internalized this posture. And every time what someone would consider a knock or a negative comes, you say, great. More cleansing of my soul. My soul is even in a higher place now. As we'll learn in chapter 12, if I had to do this kapara in the afterlife, it would have been so much more intense. We'll learn that, right? That when we do it here in this life, we accomplish a lot more with a lot less grief. So that humility I'm feeling, it's maybe 1/60th of what my soul would have gone through to do that same amount of work. So fantastic, right? I'm revved up. I'm excited. It's like I just won $10,000 on a scratch lottery ticket. Let's go, right? Next beautiful thing to happen. I don't know anyone like that necessarily. I met some guys in Jerusalem that I think might be like that just show up, and every time I see them, they're on cloud 9, like they just won the lottery. And I literally, there's one guy I thought something great must have happened that morning, because the first time I saw him, he was just beaming. But then I saw him the next day also beaming, and the next time I visited Israel, he showed up also beaming. I was like, that's just his normal. His normal is beaming, right? So good, bad, all good. My sins are in front of me. God's helping me. I'm just thrilled and happy. That is level 3. That is level 3. And we can actually do that. If you practice this technique, you internalize it, and you lay it down in your mind and your heart, this is available for us to have that posture. Okay, number 1.
Did this development of this mindset over the years give to Jewish people a reputation for passivity and make them targets for discrimination, intimidation?
Well, you tell me, what you think when wider culture thinks of a Jewish person, they think of a meek person that doesn't have opinions, that doesn't answer back, that doesn't make problems, that isn't pushy.
That's right.
That, do you think that's the image of Jews?
I think that's it. Yes, in
Oh.
a lot of cases. It wasn't until Israel, the state of Israel, came along, and Jews stood up, and then the world recognized, hey, this is a different breed of person.
Yeah, I get that, and I agree with that. I think Israel changed our psyche for good. It's hard to even go back and understand what it was like. But I would say, I think the Jews of Eastern Europe were in such a perilous situation, there was nothing they could do. I mean, you're not armed, you're not strong,
Right.
and 50 Cossacks come into your village, you're going to hide, you're going to run. That's what you're going to do. So that, I don't think they had a choice. And B, generally Jews are pretty obstinate, stubborn people with lots of opinions. Like I don't think you do this and it makes you like someone's doormat. Especially because, as we said, in fact, you do stand up for yourself in real time. So this is not here to say someone's coming at me with a knife, and I just say, oh, good, more kapara here. Please go ahead, right? Of course, I defend myself. I run. If somebody is a toxic person, I don't need to be involved with them. I don't say, oh, good, let me sit down and have another negative conversation, right? I protect myself. But once it's happened in the past, now I can't avoid it or change it or defend anybody. It's happened in the past. It's now divine providence. That's where we use this. So, there's a danger. There's a danger if you go about it the wrong way, that you might be perceived as or become a little too passive. I get it. And that's why we specifically say this is only for things that have happened, not for things happening. Yeah.
And this vision of the happy little shtetl guy is not what motivated a bulk of Jewish people to emigrate to the United States the 1800s.
Yeah, but what's the contradiction there in terms of what we're saying?
They
What's the
weren't all
contradiction?
happy, and I can overcome my anger at this Cossack that's killing my children.
Yeah.
I'm leaving, and I'm
Right. So my question: how does that contradict anything the Alter Rebbe is teaching?
because you can get angry, and anger can be a motivator, and you're not always happy. You can't always just be happy over, I must have done something really terrible, so I'll just grin and bear it. No, you leave. I mean, that's why so many people emigrated. They weren't happy.
So I'll say I don't see a contradiction. Why?
Because you're saying they were happy, I'm saying they weren't happy.
Well, they're happy knowing that they're in circumstances that other people would not be happy in. They're happy in circumstances where they know they're feeling physical pain or hunger. I mean, they're alive, right? And when they have the opportunity, they leave, getting themselves out of danger and getting more opportunity. And again, that doesn't contradict this, because the Alter Rebbe is saying this is only things that have happened, not things that are happening. So right now I'm living in poverty. My children are not safe. I have an opportunity to get to America, and of course I go. But the question is, when I'm on that boat, when I land in America, do I think, oh, I'm a scarred person that was persecuted. I'll never be happy again. My past is so horrible. I hate God. Why did this happen? Or do I think, it was all for the good. I'm going to arrive in the new land. I'm going to be a joyful person. I'm going to share joyful Judaism with my children. And everything that happened in the past, I can't understand the reason, but I'm going to leave it to God. I'm going to be joyful. Like, which of those are you going to have a better life with?
Well, that's the present also. If, at that point in time, that's the present. Obviously that's a good thing. I'm glad I left. But while they were there, you can't say they were happy and joyful. I mean, that doesn't...
You don't think there were Hasidim that were joyful? You don't think there were people...
I think they thought they were. I think they...
What's the difference between thinking you're joyful and being joyful? Is there a difference?
Joy, but it's not the moments of joy that motivated them to leave. It was the fact of their circumstances that motivated them.
Yeah, and you should leave, right? The Alter Rebbe is not saying stay where you're suffering.
Yeah.
The Alter Rebbe is just saying if you couldn't get out and you couldn't avoid the suffering that happened, now this is a tool to still be a joyful person and not be a broken person.
Well, it's good if you can forget and put it in your past. And I mean, that's just,
Yeah, there's a story I tell often about Reb Zusha, right?
Yeah.
Where someone came to, I think it was the Alter Rebbe, and he asked him, how can you thank God genuinely for something negative that happens? How can you do this stuff you're teaching? I know on paper, I know it's ideal. I mean, we can fool ourselves and play mind tricks, but how can you genuinely thank God for something negative? And by the way, should I be lying to God if I really think it was bad? I'm thanking God. Isn't that dishonest? Like, how do you do this? The Alter Rebbe said, for that, you have to go to Reb Zusha and ask him, because he's the master of this. And so it's the middle of the winter. They quickly travel to the town where this Hasidic master was living. I've told this story before. They go to the town. They figure he's probably in the nice area. And they say, no, Reb Zusha lives on the edge of town. They go there and they find something they think is a shed, but actually that's Reb Zusha's house. They knock on the door and he answers, and he's bitter cold, dressed in rags with just a half a candle, learning in the half dark. And they look at him. And by the way, he also was a very ill person. He had many illnesses. So probably at the time he was also suffering. And they said, Reb Zusha, the Alter Rebbe sent us. We asked him an important question. How does one truly thank God in the face of great misfortune? What's the secret?
He doesn't know.
And Reb Zusha looked at him and said,
You have to ask.
Why did he send you to me? God's only been so good to me. How would I even know? Right? So I can promise you from knowing people, right, and from hearing stories directly about people, that there are people that practice this, that managed, even in the face of the adversity of Eastern Europe and the adversity of the Soviet Union, to still live a life of purpose and live a life of joy. I mean, were they dancing in the street like they're at a birthday party with a cake? No, but inner joy, inner meaning, inner purpose, and a sense that I'm happy that God's with me here, that's something that they did achieve through this technique. And if they could do it there, imagine what we can do here with my nice Starbucks coffee, and I can get a beautiful shofar easily, and I have 20 sets of clothing to wear instead of one. I have a shower every day. I can spend all time learning or helping people. Like, we should be just euphoric.
It's all relative
Yeah.
when you consider the possible alternative.
It is. That's another technique. Of course, it's all relative. And finishing, v'chol hamavir al midotav mavirin lo al kol pisha'av. Moreover, whoever passes over their feelings, all their sins are passed over. That's actually in the Talmud. So we should know as well there's a benefit for this. That every time something happens to me or someone does something to me, and I ignore my feelings and reframe and I take a posture of joy towards it, now that causes God to pass over even more of my sins. So if I mess up in some way, and we all do, now this is a little insurance policy that I got some credit there because I passed over my feelings. That'll be reflected in how God treats me, and God will say, you know what? Fine. I'm not gonna hold you on that one because look how you passed over your feelings. So all kinds of benefits. And in fact, when we looked for a king, we basically said that somebody had to. One of the qualities we needed for a king was to have skeletons in their closet, to have like a sorted, some kind of a past that they should be ashamed of, right? And that was one of the problems of Shaul, is that he came from Binyamin, who had never sinned, and he was an amazing lineage, and he was just this noble, righteous person, and he had no sympathy. He had no ability to be sensitive to other people around him because he didn't have anything embarrassing in his past. Whereas, let's not get into David, but obviously David had a lot of skeletons in his closet, and that allowed him to be sensitive and recognize that whoever came to him and whatever they did, that he should have been stern and punished them, he could understand what was going on. Oh, I want to do a quick meditation just to end. I see the office needs me, but let me give a little 5-minute piece. So I want to have us actually model this, and we're going to do a quick meditation. This is a little more, like I said, on the neuro-linguistic programming side. So if you just go with me, I'm going to give you a tool for how to hold your sins in front of you all the time, but at a distance, as the Alter Rebbe is saying. And we're going to create, so to speak, a slide, or whatever they call it, online when you put something, when you get the little cat eyes, or, a filter. So if online, when you look at things, you can put a filter in front of it. We're going to create a filter for ourselves through which we can see anything that happens. And when you need it, you can add this filter to your life, and that will allow you to start using this technique more effectively of having your sins in front of you. Just take a moment and close your eyes. If you've done the meditation with us, you can feel free to use your technique and open a wisdom gateway. If not, just simply relax your breath, even it out, relax your body. Try and breathe through your nose gently. Just breathe in and out in an even fashion. Start to pay attention to whatever is in your mind, whatever the contents are right now. Now I'm going to ask you to imagine that those contents of your mind are something like a computer. And perhaps you're sitting at a keyboard and looking at a screen, watching those contents. Like maybe you were at a computer, it's just contents. All kinds of stuff on that drive, it's pretty neutral. And we can access whatever we want, we know how. So let's go to the, whether you got a hard drive or a cloud, doesn't matter to me. Let's just go into your files and pull up on your computer something you've done you'd consider a sin, something you're ashamed of, embarrassed of, any time in your life. Doesn't matter whether you've done tshuva for it or not. Just whatever pulls up. Just do a search on your computer for sins or for embarrassed and see what comes up. Now let's bring that event, whatever it is, onto the screen so we're watching it of our mind. And what we're going to do is we're going to rename and reconfigure where that event is stored on your hard drive, so to speak. So now that you have it on your screen, I want you to use the controls of your keyboard and your mouse. It doesn't matter whether you know how to do this in real time, just use whatever commands occur to you. I want you to take that event, and if you're seeing it on the screen in color, I want you to switch the screen to black and white. Just hit a black and white icon. It'll switch to black and white, you'll see. You're good. So now, instead of watching it in color, I'm watching it in black and white. If there's sound coming from your computer speakers, I want you to just turn the sound off. I want you to hit mute. Right, so now I'm watching the event in black and white and without any sound. It should be easy to accomplish. Right, now, instead of it taking up the whole screen, I want to take it and shrink it, the way you would on a screen, until it's just a small little window on the screen. And then, my mind, it's a 3D screen, so I want to move it also back deep into the screen, far away. So maybe 50 or 100 feet from me. So it's now, rather than being big in my face and color with sound, it's black and white, it's muted, there's no sound, it's off at a distance of 50 to 100 feet deep into the screen. And finally, if it's moving and animated and I'm in there, I want you to stop it, make it just a series of pictures, right? So we'll erase the video component of it. We'll just leave some stills, maybe a series of 6 stills that can remind me of what that incident is. So I can click through them like a slideshow, but it's not moving. I'm not in that. It's outside. All right. So if you're seeing this now on your computer screen, it's far off, 50 to 100 feet, black and white, no sound. Just a few frames to remind me. Now this is very important. Now that we've renamed, and let's actually take the file, and if the file was maybe called something like the most embarrassing thing, let's rename it Sins at a Distance. And actually type that in. Erase the old name, type in the new name, Sins at a Distance. Now we're all together going to hit save. Let's get ready and click on your mouse to save it. 1, 2, 3, save. Just watch it for a bit, kind of settle it. And this is the lens that I want to pull up. The next time something happens in my life that's negative, that I feel like my blood starts to race or my temperature goes up, I'm going to pull this file up, Sins at a Distance. But it's not in my face. I'm not, it's pretty far off, but the information's there. And it'll remind me, as the Alter Rebbe said, A, okay, I got something to be humble about. And B, God's helping me continue to cleanse my soul, because at each year I'm at a higher level. I need new cleansing. And this is actually a beautiful favor from God. And perhaps the first time I won't be dancing with joy at something that I might have been negative about, but maybe less negativity. But I'll ask you during this week, the first or the next time something comes up that feels like a misfortune, I want you to pull up this slide as it's saved now with this title, Sins at a Distance, and just display it in your screen as you're dealing with the event. And see if you can shift from perhaps a counterproductive emotional posture to one of joy. Now we got our file saved, so you can shut the computer down, come back to life in this room. And we'll continue with that meditation. Our next class is we go through chapter 12, which gives us even more tools on why and how we should be not just happy in the face of misfortune, but actually happy due to misfortune, from misfortune itself, which is an even higher octane approach. Thanks so much for joining us. I wish everybody a wonderful Elul and high holiday season as we learn about Tshuva, and I'll see you in our next class.